poor workers who hoped communism as a dream come true were dying in the streets. This growing inequality made people very angry and desperate for a revolution. Under the leadership of Mao Zedong, China also followed communism. India under the British rule also faced the same issues. Communism begins with a bold promise of a world with no rich and no poor. It imagines a society where private property does not exist. All land is collectively owned by the people. In this system, everyone is expected to work according to their ability and they will receive it according to their needs. For millions of workers who struggled in the early 1800s, this was a hope, a dream come true. But to understand why communism became so popular, we have to go back to the world of Industrial Revolution. Before digging into the facts, subscribe to Sapiens Speaks for more unbiased content they never taught you. The early 1800s of Europe was shaped by the Industrial Revolution. Factories were rising in every city, machines were producing goods faster than ever, and business owners were becoming extremely wealthy. But behind this rapid progress, there was a harsher reality. The workers lived the extremely difficult lives. Adult males worked for more than 14 hours a day in unsafe and overcrowded environment, and child labor became very often. Most families lived in very unhygienic conditions, and many workers did not live long enough to see old age. And in meanwhile, the owners of these factories had a luxurious life. The gap between the rich and the poor kept growing, and the system clearly favored the persons who already had wealth. India under the British rule also faced the same issues. Textile mills in Bombay and Calcutta were filled with exhausted workers who spent long hours in a suffocating room, earned very low wages, and have almost no labor rights. This growing inequality made people very angry and desperate for a revolution. This was the world Karl Marx closely observed. Karl Marx was a German philosopher who noticed throughout the history society has been divided into two parts, the powerless and the powerful. He called the powerful people who owned the factories as bourgeois, and the people who were powerless, working in the factories day and night, were called the proletariat. He believed capitalism allowed a group of people to control, to own every piece of land, factories and money, while the majority worked constantly just to survive. To solve this inequality, Marx proposed a solution in his short book, The Communist Manifesto. He imagined a world where private property was completely abolished, all resources were shared, and wealth was distributed according to the need of the individual rather than family background or inherited power. The first major attempt to apply communism happened in Russia in 1917. After years of poverty and war, people overthrew the monarchy of Russia, the Tsar. This was known as the Bolshevik Revolution. Lenin took over the control. He promised land for the peasants, rights for workers, and public ownership of the factories. For a short time, it felt that the dream had come true. Under the leadership of Mao Zedong, China also followed communism. Countries like Cuba and Vietnam attempted their own versions of communist revolution. In the early years, the movement seemed full of hope, but soon, every country that ran into communism followed the same pathway of downfall. Communism struggled mainly because this economic system did not sustain in real life. These economic issues created even bigger political and social problems. One of the major issues was motivation. Think of it, you are working 14 hours a day, but a man with some disability is working just 3 hours a day. Both of you will receive the same amount of money according to your need. When everyone receives similar benefits regardless of how hard they work, people gradually stop putting their best effort. And when reward and performance are not intertwined, productivity drops, and without productivity, an economy cannot grow. Another major challenge was the ownership. Marx imagined that the people would collectively manage the resources, but this never happened. In every communist country, the government becomes owner of all land, all property, all resources. And when so much power is concentrated in someone's hand, corruption is guaranteed, and the entire economy becomes inefficient. Central planning caused even more problems. Sitting in a room, governments tried to control the whole country, how much food to grow, what factories should produce. and how much people needed. But an economy is far too complex. As a result, shortages became common, and in extreme cases like the China's leap forward, these planning mistakes led to a massive famine. Innovation also slowed down. With no competition, no incentive, industries stopped updating their technology. Products became outdated and the communist countries fell far behind the other capitalist ones. As these economic problems grew, governments tried to maintain control by restricting freedom of individuality. Criticism were treated as rebellion. Opposition parties were removed and people were afraid to speak openly. And over time, combination of low motivation, inefficient management, poor planning, lack of motivation, and strict political control weakened these communist countries. And moreover, with the rise of dictatorships like Stalin, Mao Zedong, the poor workers who hoped communism as a dream come true were dying in the streets. This is the bloody truth of communism that no one tells you. Subscribe to Sapiens Speaks for more truths they never taught you.